Welcome to Legends of Grayskull, the podcast that dives deep into the mythology of Masters of the Universe, with your hosts Matthew Dooch and Shawn Scavana. News, reviews, remasterings and more are just ahead on Legends of Grayskull.
Hello everybody, welcome to episode 70 of Legends of Grayskull, the fan podcast where we discuss the history, the mystery, the magic and mythology of He-Man, She-Ra, Eternia, Etheria, Nordor, Primus, new adventures, old adventures, Ladybird, UK animals, comics, mini-comics, anything and everything you can think of with that He-Man, She-Ra, Masters of the Universe, Princess of Power, that Revelation logo right across our television screens. I'm Matthew Dooch, here again with Shawn Scavana. Shawn, how are we doing tonight?
I'm doing all right. How many times have you watched it so far?
Actually, all the way through, only twice.
Only twice? Okay.
Only twice. It was a busier weekend than I anticipated, and we had grad parties and football kickoff parties and all sorts of stuff. So I only made it through twice fully. You?
Gotcha. 3. And I actually restarted this afternoon based on some of the stuff we're going to talk about because I was like, did I remember this correctly? And I did more of a fast forward this time around than watch it straight through.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I was going to do that too, but I never got to it. There were a couple things I wanted to go back over, but time is fleeting.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Here we are. But I got the first time through. Okay, well, hang on. We're getting ahead of ourselves. Welcome, everybody, as always, to Legends of Grayskull. Today, we are talking, in case you couldn't figure it out, this is all about Masters of the Universe Revelation, available now on Netflix.
Finally.
If you haven't checked it out yet, I don't know what you're waiting for. Pause this show and go do it. It's 5 episodes, about 25 minutes apiece. So a couple-ish hours of your time, and you'll be all caught up and ready to talk with us. Before we get into discussion today, I do want to say, number one, thank you again to Casey Moulton. He sent both of us a set of He-Man and Skeletor from the new Masterverse line. Thank you very much, sir. That was awesome of you. I want to give you a shout-out on a published episode. Because, in case you don't know, if you're an audio-only listener, we did do a Merry Revelation Eve special the night before Revelation premiered. And we were joined by some very special guests. We had Jesse Arnold of Off-World fame. We had Nate Barch, Danielle Galerta, Rob Bass, David Clark, Skelly Vader. Just a wonderful slew of guest hosts. We were all just talking about our hopes, our dreams, and all that for Revelation. So if you haven't checked that out yet, that one is only on the YouTube. It was filmed live, but it's still there. You can go check that out. I recommend it before you listen to this. So Friday came. So midnight Pacific is when the show premiered. That would be 3 a.m. your time, 2 a.m. my time. What time did you watch it?
Probably around 9:30 the next morning.
So you got done with Revelation Eve, tucked yourself in for the long July nap.
Well, what I did was I actually stayed up till close to 2. I want to say it was even going into 2.
Yeah.
And I thought it over and I'm like, if I watch this before I watch it with my daughter, she's really not gonna be happy with me tonight.
Right.
So yeah, I around 2:15 I think was when I finally hit the sack and woke up. I barely had sleep. It felt like Christmas when I was a kid. You know, like when I was a kid, I wanted to go to bed early because then hopefully I could sleep and just be done with everything and then have the next morning. And in this case, because of what we did, I was up so late that then I was like, well, maybe I could push it through all the way. And I'm like, I'll never survive Friday if I don't sleep. So yeah.
And that was me too. We got done with Revelation Eve. I came out. My wife was already sound asleep, so I didn't want to go upstairs and wake her up. And so I just crashed on the couch. I woke up throughout the night. I woke up at like 3:30 in the morning. I'm like, and I did the same thing. I'm like, I sat there and like, it's there. I can watch it right now. And I almost did. And then, but I'm like, you know what? I'm not awake. I'm like, so I don't want my first time to be half asleep. In mid morning. So
Agreed.
I'm like, I went back to bed, got up for work, I take that back. I got up, got showered, and I was upstairs getting dressed. I know, guys, it's getting hot in here, but bear with me. So, and while I was getting ready for work, I had to turn on Netflix. I had to be like, is it there? It's kind of like the Christmas tree with Santa. Like if you wake up and you don't see presents under the tree, you're like, you got to go check it. Even if you can't open the presents yet because mom and dad aren't awake, you got to go check the tree to make sure it's all there. So that's how I was. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna turn it on and see if it's there. Sure enough, load up Netflix, select my user, and right across the front page, right on top, the big banner is Master Universe Revelation. Like this is their big thing. And I was like, oh my god, beautiful Nate March artwork. Whereas our print Netflix. So, and I the only thing I allowed myself to do before work is I played it to see if there was an intro. I said, I'm gonna hit play. I'm gonna see if there's an intro. If there's not, if it's just a show right away, I'm just gonna turn it off. And so I watched that beautiful intro, and then it went to Stridor's foot coming down, and I turned it off. And I was like, okay, it's there. I can play it. I'm great. Yep. Fast forward to get off work, get the kids. I don't know. We had stuff going on. Got the kids all settled. Got dinner. It's probably about 6 p.m. now. And I go to sit down in front of the TV, and nothing is working. I check my Comcast app, and there is an outage in my area. And I'm just like,
I remember.
This is
you sent me you're like, are you kidding me, Comcast?
This is the only outage I have ever had since I've been with Comcast, when it wasn't storming or you know what I mean, like power didn't go out, nothing. It was just Comcast internet, and I'm like, of all the days. But luckily, we finished dinner, and we got cleaned up, and we got showers done, and then by that time the internet was back up, and it's like, okay, now so it was probably about 7:30 by that time when I finally got to sit down, watched it with the kids, my wife, everybody was hyped for it. Now, sure, that was mainly because of me, I'm sure, but it was a whole family event. Everyone gathered around, and we watched all 5 back to back. So, going from there, how about that intro?
I first off, the minute that because I brought it up just recently on the show about the colors for Masters, and I said about how that old the card art always drew me in. And what do? The first thing you see is a Netflix, and I'm like, brick. And the red brick, and it's animated, and the blue background, and I sat there going, oh, you're doing it, you're playing my song, and then when you get into the actual like narrative intro, and you have Liam Cunningham, who's the voice of our Man at Arms for the Revelation series, and he's getting to. I like how they peppered in certain lines from the movie, or skewed them a little bit.
The whole thing was riffing off the '87 movie intro. That is where it came from. They tweaked some stuff so that wasn't a word for word, but it was in honor of. Absolutely.
And for me especially, I like seeing the art and seeing the art actually coming to life, because they actually used it. It wasn't just here's a static image. No, they're animating with it and all that. It's like, man, like seeing the classics Grayskull box art,
Yes,
and the movement of the figures, and then they go to the and the only one who can stand between Skeletor and his minions are Prince Adam, and when he holds his power sword, he becomes. And just watching that whole thing, I'm like, if this was how the intro was when I was a kid versus Adam doing it to the screen, I would have probably fallen over just like in shock, going like, "This is it. This is definitely it." It was beautifully done.
it was so unexpected too, because I hadn't heard anything about the intro. I'd heard rumors that there was going to be an intro, but I hadn't heard anything about it really. And the direction they took with using the old artwork, both surprised me and was just like, well, yeah, that's perfect for what this is. It's and I think that was kind of the point. It's showing you like, hey, this is, and let's just get it out of the way right away. This is, like we've been saying, a spiritual successor to the vintage era, and I thought that was the perfect way to kind of be like, hey, remember? I mean, there was box art, there was classics box art, there was just the posters that came with the magazines. There was a couple foreign ones in there. Like, it was just this whole plethora of sources, and it even had some of the actual Revelation animation in there, with the four others that share this secret. It was Sorceress, Man Arms, Orko, and they added Cringer in there. I like that Cringer got his own little nod there, like, hey, don't forget about him. He's one of the original ones. So it was kind of that perfect segue, like, hey guys, don't forget, this is the sequel to everything you grew up on. And I think that's a big point to make, and I think it's still getting lost on some people. The biggest problem in my mind is that we got to remember, even if you exclude, which they excluded anything that came after, New Adventures, Mike Young Productions, all that's out the window. Like, this is, what was it, Halloween? They did a sequel that took place after 2 of the movies, but not any of the rest. Like, that's the idea of what this is. But even then, even when you're just going with vintage sources, they're going to have some stuff that doesn't line up. I mean, we talk about this all the time. There are vintage tales that don't match up with each other. There are mini comics that contradict each other. I mean, not even getting into the Filmation versus mini comic versus anything else. And that's what we as fans have to remember going into this. It's like, there is no way to make a perfect sequel to that era, because some of that just doesn't work with each other. So I'm just going to throw that out there again as we get into it. And I do want to mention right quick, I meant to say it a little earlier, but I'm just so excited. And I'm tired of hiding it. I'm about to lose control. And I think I like it. So.
I had a feeling that was the case.
Low-hanging fruit. Right now, Shawn and I are going to do our overview of the entire series. We are not going to hit everything we want to. We're not going to hit every moment in the series. But, coming soon, we will be posting our breakdown videos, where we will dive deep into each episode, and we'll be releasing those soon. So, just be prepared. So this is just our overview today. We're hitting general points, general thoughts and feelings. Coming soon, you're going to have 5 episodes of Legends of Grayskull goodness. That's all episode by episode. So, all right. Where do we want to start here, Shawnee? Give me a like. What's something you liked about this series?
What's something I liked about the series? I think. Here's the question: are we doing like, love, hate story, or are we doing like the likes or just
We're just talking like about
like
stuff,
or love?
but I want to start with some good stuff. Good stuff.
All right, good stuff. Good stuff. So, all right, I'll go with this to start off. So when I showed my daughter the trailers for Revelation,
yep,
she got the most kick out of Orko, and she was actually really excited that they had him in the new show. And I'm like, well, there's no way they wouldn't, but I'm glad it makes her happy. Well, I had no idea that Orko was going to be my favorite part.
Wow.
That completely blew me away. So, like Love, Griffin Newman's Orko is hands down for me one of the greatest parts of this entire series. And it's one of those. It's the underdog story. It's very much like we've known him as a screw up. We've known him as just the childlike Orko for all these years, and even 2000X, he felt he was a little older than the Orko from Filmation, in my opinion, at least. But it always had that, he was bumbling, he messed up constantly, and here we have at the end of his days, Orko, all the magic getting drained out of Eternia. He is magic, so there is that, like, he's dying, and it also it got me in the feels for the fact that Man at Arms of all people is caretaking him, because they've always had a tumultuous relationship, but there they are. And he's getting that water, and it's the magical water, and he wants to take it back because he knows that's going to save Orko. And we get into the whole thing of him talking about his old adventures, and him, like it got me when he went, please, Teela, take me on one last adventure, and just that moment, I was like, wow. And then my daughter, in that, she turned around and she wanted to say something to me, and she just looked and she just went back to the screen. And then later on, when he did his big moment with Scareglow, which that for me is one of the absolute best moments of the whole series, she turned around again and she looked at me and turned away. And after the episode was over, she goes, I saw you crying. I go, how could I not? Like, oh my God. Like they got him to be one of my absolute favorite parts, and I've never liked him until this series. And I've professed many times, Orko was just something that when Filmation threw him at me, I was like, I don't give a crap about this. I want to see He-Man fighting villains and evil. And here it is. The heart of the show for me was Orko. Go figure, and how the effect of him.
No, he had a great storyline. He had he was animated wonderfully. He looked alien and the Orko we love at the same time. I really enjoyed it. The funny thing is, and this, you've led right into another great point I wanted to make tonight. We as longtime fans need to understand that just because we liked something before doesn't mean we can't like something different, and that they both can be valid. Because I know when it gets to the part with him and Evil Lynn, where he's talking about his past and how he's a screw up as a kid and everything else, like, that is a complete variance from Filmation, where he was Orko the Great on Trala. He was that guy. Mm-hmm. He was amazing. He was skilled. He was gifted. He excelled. And then when he came to Eternia, that's when things went sideways for him. Which I'll say is still my preferred storyline for Orko. But how they presented here was an Orko who has always been the screw up. He's always been the underdog. His own parents were ashamed of him. Like, he has always lived this life, even before coming to Eternia, that he wasn't good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And that plays perfectly into the moment they set up, where he does take on Scareglow and defeats him. I mean, that is a great end to that Orko arc. So it's vastly different, but I still loved every minute of it. I'm like, yeah, this is the Orko that Revelation needed to get here. And I think us as fans we're always too worried that if we like something that we can't like something that contradicts that. Sure we can. Nothing's changing the Orko that was already there. But this Orko, he's got some merits.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, obviously, that whole sequence ends with the death of Orko. For you audio listeners, I am doing quotation marks on death because, I mean, I love speculating. That's all I'm doing here. I have no insider information, but Orko was literally casting a portal spell trying to send Scareglow away. He said, "Be gone, Scareglow," in his spell. So, dead? Not dead? I think that's a little more up in the air than some would like to admit. What do you think, Shawn?
Well,
Is Orko done for?
I first off, I don't think so. Second off, I did listen to Fat Man Beyond this past weekend, especially that was a must listen because of Revelation. And Kevin Smith was more than willing to throw a couple spoilers out there, not in like
La la
specifics,
la 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 la
but
la la
in
la.
the fact
He
that
hates when
he
I
could
do that.
tell. I do. Anybody that does that drives me up the wall. It's one of my biggest pet peeves, other than Paul McCartney simply having a wonderful Christmas time. Um, hate that song.
Simply
Um,
having wonderful
so
Christmas time.
he dropped some knowledge on people. If you enjoyed it, I'd say instead of me getting into it, go watch what he had to say, and we'll leave it at that. So then that way I could save myself from hearing Matt do his la 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 things versus worrying about his spoiler phobia.
I will say, well, let's go there because
Mm-hmm.
obviously we saw both the trailers.
Mm-hmm.
We were pretty deep in. I watched that scene that popped up a few days before where they're on the boat and everything else. Do you feel that you were in too deep and you kind of knew what was going to happen, or do you feel that there were enough surprises on the way to still uh, uh, enjoy it?
I'd say there were plenty of surprises, and
Yeah,
it was one of those shows where I didn't want to sit there and pick apart what it was. I always did like a broad strokes of
yeah,
maybe they'll do this or maybe they'll do
yeah.
that. But what got me and this bugged me by the end of it, and I'm not blaming. I'm actually not going to blame Netflix or
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Smith for this. I'm blaming Mattel for this. Why did you have to freaking release Skelegod when
Skellige.
that would have been one of the most insane cliffhangers you could have left any Masters of the Universe fan on, and then release Skelegod in wave 3, maybe, where we had no idea this figure was going to come out? Because the minute that they threw that out there, and then all of a
Yep.
sudden the speculation of that, by the time we get to episode 5, I was sitting there going, well, Skelegod's going to show up at some point because there's no freaking way they're going to do this show and have Skelegod be in part 2.
Right.
And when it happens, I'm just sitting there going, well, now I know where Skelegod shows up then. And then where it cut, it's like, why did they have to do that? And I'm not a big spoiler phobe. I actually, I can go into spoilers at points. But even I was like, did you really need to do that right then? Did you really need that out a month before this thing hit?
Right. Well, that's the thing. Really, Wave 1 doesn't officially hit until August. So you still could have done Skellige in Wave 1 and have him pop up, more like the Faker. Like just shortly before, or even day of. That was one of the things that surprised me. As it kept going on, I'm like, and I think that was the biggest thing in kind of our timeline of events based on the trailers is we all assumed since Skellige was out before the show aired that he was going to be like, okay, Skeletor has to get the power like right away. I think that was one of the biggest things that I was wrong about. But yeah, as it went on, it's like I thought the same thing. I'm like, do we really not see Skellige until part 2? And then it's like, oh, right at the end, and that was the first thing I thought of. I'm like, why'd they release that figure so early? I mean, that was the first figure you could find and easily find.
Yep.
And I don't have an answer. I really.
I mean, even if I'm not looking for spoilers, I'm on enough pages about toys on Facebook that I was going to find that out somehow way in advance. And like when you have that be your cliffhanger, it's like, okay, yes, we don't know what's going to happen in 6 through 10. We don't know how the Scale of God story is going to play out between him versus He-Man and all this stuff. Although there is some insight into that on the Fat Man Beyond as well. But the thing is, that was such a game changer that you really do not need to have that figure out right now. That could have been because Wave 2, they just showed those off recently. And they could have just had, okay, Scale of God, he'll be the deluxe one for Wave 2. Wave 1 has Battle Cat. Be done with it. And then we get to see Scale of God in all his glory in the show. Yeah. And then we get to know the figures on his way. And that's okay.
I think you could have thrown Faker into that Wave 1 to get that deluxe figure in Wave 1. Because, I mean, from the second that trailer dropped, everyone's like, oh, that's Faker. I mean, we watched it live premiere in within 5 minutes. We were like, Faker's there. So that Faker could have easily been the Wave 1 Deluxe, and everyone would have been like, oh, okay. Like, I mean, that was... And then he shows up. He's the first character on screen in this show. So let's jump back. I got more to say about the end, but let's jump back a little bit here.
We got to get into your like.
We gotta get in there. Well, I wanted to get back to the beginning a little bit.
All right.
First up, for spoilers, I could have gone with a bit less. I wish I had seen a bit less beforehand, because other than a few key points, I didn't feel like there were any huge surprises throughout it, except for, I mean, obviously Skelly God waiting until the end, but we already knew Skelly God was coming. The only other big thing I've got is the death of He-Man, which happened right in the beginning. And I really thought I was correct in the fact that they would just kind of send him to another dimension, or send him to the past, or have him locked away somehow. I did not think they would actually kill him off. And so that part... And the thing is, you don't even really find out that he is really dead until basically episode 4, when he shows up at the end. That's when it's like, oh no, in like episode 5, it's like, oh no, he really did die. Up until that point, I was still like, okay, he's somewhere. He's coming back. Which, of course, he did end up coming back, but I don't know. I was kind of shocked that they actually did kill him off and bring him back to life, rather than just put him somewhere.
Yeah. As weird as this is going to sound, and I'm sure there's people out there that would be fine with maybe like 12 episodes rather than 5, as in like 12 instead of 10.
Yeah.
I kept feeling like this show almost deserved to have an episode leading up to the first episode.
Yes.
Even before the prequel comics, because it did you get into it so quickly.
Yes.
And you're trying to go, okay, this isn't going to be exactly what I knew, but if you're interested in watching it, you're interested in at least going, but what are they going to do with this?
Right.
You're kind of accepting of a lot of stuff, or maybe you're there going, well, they wouldn't have done that or whatever. But there were definitely, to me, there was a feeling of, I felt it needed one episode more. Yes, we have a prequel comic book, but that isn't the same as having an episode before this leading into that, because there were definitely, like, as a Filmation, if you watch Filmation, and the thing is, some of the stuff that we reviewed in the last year of us doing this came in handy watching this, which amused the heck out of me. And even 2000X, because 2000X we reviewed, The Deep End?
Yep.
And that's the one where Skeletor realizes he shouldn't take over the castle. There's something in the castle that's the most important thing.
Right.
Like, as in, well, no, he realizes Grayskull is the reason he should go after it.
He needs to go after Grayskull, not the Eternal's palace.
Exactly.
He realizes Randor isn't the real power in Eternity.
Yes. And that played, for me at least, it played into Skeletor doing his whole, I've realized this is what it's about versus what I thought it was all these years. And today I'm going to come in and I'm going to rip Grayskull down stone by stone until I get the power source. And I was like,
Right.
that fits into 2000X's thinking, and there's this and there's that.
And Skeletor knew a lot at the beginning of this. Even He-Man's playing catch up to him as far as what he knows. So I said it before. I think that the prequel comic needed to be done before the start of this series, and I think I'm going to be proven right on that point because we reviewed issue 1, so it's fair game in my opinion. But if you haven't read issue 1 yet, you probably should. But just based on how they were going through the forging of the Power Sword and the Orlax and all that, I think this whole comic's gonna end up revealing how Skeletor got all this knowledge that he has and leading us into it. That's my speculation, just based on that first issue, and then this first episode where it's like Skeletor seems to know the Castle Grayskull as well as the Sorceress does. So it's got me really excited to finish that comic series. But that's going to be months after this show has already aired, which I think is a little backwards in my opinion. But
so let me ask you a question, because you are more steeped in Filmation than I remember at this point. But first episode, Revelation. Revelation. There weren't many glaring moments that really stuck out for me going, well, that's different, and now this is like a new way of viewing it, or the characters acting a little different than what you remember or whatever. The one moment that I was hung up on the most this weekend was the beginning, when it's like, okay, you have Faker on Stridor, and he's got Spikor and Clawful in tow, and it's like he's carrying them as prisoners to Grayskull.
Right.
And I'm thinking, okay, that like in the scheme of like how the preview went, it works in He-Man's a Strider. What's that all about? And it gives you some questions. It gives you some speculation. But then I was like, well, why would he be bringing them to Grayskull anyway? Because Grayskull technically is not where, like, I'm thinking 2000X in this way, I guess, because I know in 2000X there was, when they would go to the castle, there was a prison in it, and they could put the villains in there. They dealt with that multiple times on that show. And then it's like, well, why would you put these guys in Grayskull? That doesn't make sense. So that should have been a warning sign, in my opinion. And then the Sorceress coming out, the drawbridge lowering, and her coming out and meeting them right on the drawbridge, I was like, that doesn't seem right either, because Sorceress doesn't, like in Filmation, she usually should be at the parapet, and maybe she'd turn into Zor and fly or something like that. And they did have Zor flies in and then all that. But it was very, very suspicious. And here she is just opening the door and everything's going on. And she even mentioned, on Teela's big day, Skeletor's warriors are still not taking a rest or whatever. And I'm like, does not this mean that? It's like, think a minute, Sorceress. You should not be doing this. And then when all hell starts breaking loose, I really was sitting there going, why did you open the drawbridge? Like, am I overthinking this, or how did you take that?
I mean, it's the Faker conceit. Like, you have to, for Faker to be a threat, he's got to be a reasonable duplicate. And obviously, they're not going to spend 20 minutes on, convincing the Sorceress that the Faker is really He-Man. So it just, to me, it's just one of those cartoon things. Like, it's a fantasy world. You just gotta go with it. And if anything, you could say that because he used the shaping staff, that it was that, because it had that magical boost to it from the shaping staff, that that helped everything. Like, it helped trick the Sorceress. But I do love in that scene when Skeletor reveals that he's really Spikor, and he's monologuing. He's like, Skeletor!" She just blasts him, and he goes flying
it's a Lord
backwards.
of Destruction.
Yeah. No. it was a good. I like that. I like that. As soon as she saw it with Skeletor, she just starts blasting, and she
Mm-hmm.
doesn't let up. But obviously, and then we find out Clawful's really evil Lynn, and Stridor's really Night Stalker, and everything went south for the sorceress. But she still held her own,
Mm-hmm.
and all that. I thought it was a great opening scene, intermixed with the royal palace and everything. Yeah, obviously it looks shady as all get out, especially when a character knows He-Man's secret. Um, but yeah, just one of those things we just got to roll with. So
I
uh,
did, but on the second viewing, that's when I started questioning. And by the third one, I'm like, okay, we got to talk about this at least, because this is definitely making me feel like
yeah,
Sorceress was her first day on the job or
it also
something like
it did happen very quickly. I'll give her that. Like Spycore revealed himself to be Skeletor, and and then basically right after that, He-Man grabbed her and it was like boom, boom, boom. I guess the only
yeah,
thing is, her lowering the drawbridge right off the bat, but you know,
yeah.
one bad day, right?
These are my questions though, because like I said,
Yeah,
I've heard of there were some complaints about Trala not looking like Trala, and things completely, the upside down rainbows not being upside down. And for me, I was like, I want to talk more
even
about the sorceress than I'm worried about Trala at this point, because that was an illusion. At
yeah.
least that didn't really bother
Well,
me.
and even Tralla was portrayed very differently from appearance to appearance throughout the
Yeah,
show. I mean, it got less and less super fantastical as the series progressed. So, and that's
yeah,
why that's why I went back to at the beginning. It's like some of this stuff is just hard because there were already inconsistencies. So now you're moving into a new era. But what I liked it right off the bat. It was kind of like, okay, we are pushing it forward. I really like that. They took the central concept of what, and we've talked about it before. I know it's come up in other places. It's like, what happens without He-Man and Skeletor on Eternia?
hmm
What happens then? And New Adventures was going to do it in its second season that never got made. Um, Emiliano tackled it in his Homecoming comic, also based
hmm
kind of after the New Adventures era. Like, it's been a thought through the fandom for years, and so it was nice to finally see a show go, okay, well, let's do it. Let's see what happens.
yeah,
And to top it all off, you know, not only do He-Man and Skeletor get taken out, but Adam never has that moment. He never has that moment to tell Tila how he really feels, who he really is. He never gets that moment with his dad. He never gets, and this is going. I should have looked up the episode number, but this has come up before in our discussions. It's like I have always said there are two ways the secret comes out. Either you know out of the desperation, Adam has to transform in front of his friends and family, or else the universe is lost, or out of his death. Like, one day, He Man is going to die, and someone will have to deliver the news to his loved
hmm
ones. And my God, that scene where Man at Arms is back in the palace and having to tell the king and queen that He Man has died, and right away Marlena breaks down, and Randor's just being the king, and he will be remembered in the halls of Returnia and all that, and then Marlene's just like, you idiot, like, we've lost everything,
hmm
and that scene gets me every time. Between that and just the scene before when He Man's actually getting blasted with the power of the universe, it's like, and Tila's looking over and sees them transform back into Adam and Cringer, and she doesn't have any time to grieve. They have to go tell the parents, and it's just like, oh my God, that scene. I thought that was
hmm
wonderfully done. Um, Wonderfully done.
yeah. That one, I For starters, me being the kind of person where the mini comics with the dual power sword deal, the fact that that finally came into play in a storyline automatically made me just get giddy. And then to see how that happens, and the fact that this is a consequence of something, and it's been whole the whole time. It's not like they discredited that story. I like that. I like that
because normally they go like, "Oh, we have to have Adam unite the two halves." I like that they put all that way in the past in the creation of the power sword. It's like, well done, well done.
Exactly. And I know listening to the commentary track that they have on YouTube, Kevin Smith was like, well, what would happen if he said it when he was He-Man? Do the incantation again. And that was the result of, okay, well, then that's how it happens. The power is so strong that then it's like, boom, it breaks because he's calling upon it like it's like supercharged, you know? And I got to admit, like that moment actually had me like, you know, catching my breath a few times because I loved watching it. First off, I loved how there was all this talking and dancing around Teela between him and the sorceress going over the plan. Yeah. And I like that where he's like, well, if I call upon the power in this form, she's like, what do you mean this form? Yeah. And then when he's doing it, and then you have that cool shot of him, they just boom, it breaks, and there's the two in his hands.
And he's still holding it, just trying to channel all the power to save everybody.
Exactly. And then you have Teela getting blinded by all the energy, and she looks over and Battle Cat turns into Cringer right before her eyes. Yeah. And then she sees Adam, and there he is, and he does that moment where he just like looks around at her. But what I loved the most was the fact that Skeletor being wounded at this point, and he looks up, and the first word that I love that he's just a boy, and he's like, he's got all the power, and he's just a boy, and I'm like, I've been waiting for that for years, and I even loved when we did the New Adventures first mini comic. That's basically what they did. Yeah. And unfortunately that doesn't have as much cred, but now we got to see it in this way. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, my God. And that little moment where he's holding it up and Skeletor's trying to come for it, and he looks behind and there's Teela, and he has that little fleeting glance right before boom. And it's like, yeah, that was great.
No, and the fact that it was Adam. It was Adam that, because if he had lost control of those swords, everything was going to be gone. The explosion from Skeletor releasing the power of the universe would have decimated everything unless Adam channeled it into the swords. And even getting the power knocked out of him, he still held on long enough that it dissipated. Yeah, I couldn't believe they went there. I'm like, okay, and that was the biggest thing, because when Skeletor was going for it, I'm like, oh, here we go, here comes Skelegod, you know? I thought that was the moment it was going to happen, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait, no, that's it? It's like, okay, where are we going now? And, you know, jumping down into, I mean, let's be honest, we've all heard a lot of talk over this past weekend. What did you think about, I don't want to go too deep because we got the breakdown videos coming, but what did you think about kind of just a general reaction by different characters? Do you feel that, you know, their reactions were warranted, they were too far? Like, what were your thinkings as that whole scene played out?
Well, I personally like the fact that they had that moment before he turned into He-Man where Marlena looks and she's like, be careful, Adam, because that was such a great nod to Rainbow Warrior, which was, again, that was one we reviewed, and I never really took the time to watch it again. I'm sure I watched it as a kid, and then it's like, boy, did that play out in here. And
well, I think it was also to help clue in the audience that hadn't seen it, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Or didn't remember it. Because I've seen that already. There are people who are like, oh, wow, when did Marlena know about the scene? It's like, oh,
exactly.
Back in the, you know, there are people mad because they felt that was shoehorned in. Oh, they made Marlena know it now. And it's like, now guys, check your episodes. It happens. So
yeah, I think like the way Randor found out was probably the most startling and chilling for me because like her doing we've lost our son and she's in tears and it's like what and it's like putting yourself in his shoes, finding this out in that moment, and then the fact it is true though, like he has that that's parental pride, Adam. One day I hope I'll know how it feels, or whatever, when he was addressing Adam earlier.
Those are
and here he is.
Last words he said to him.
The last words he said to his son before he lost them. And it's like, as a parent, that moment hit me really hard. Like, oh my God, like, what would you do if you found out in a moment like this that your son is never going to come back to you again? And then on top of that, you have it all just combines on top of this, because you have Duncan admitting it. And then you have Orko and Cringer with that silent, like you can tell they knew and they didn't, I loved all of that, actually. I loved all of that.
An amazing scene.
The only one, and I know a lot of people that I've heard over the weekend, they were doing the whole, well, now it's Tila doing the me thing. And I'm like, I don't look at it like that. But what I felt that it needed in that moment was like just a moment with her, like figuring that out on her own, maybe after the explosion, and her being like, it was, and her processing that. And then when we have that scene in the palace, I think that would have helped that moment a little more in her favor versus it being the way that a lot of people had been viewing it. But I liked it.
Definitely the time there, because I mean, she found it out back at Grayskull, and so they still had to finish up there afterwards, come back.
Exactly.
Like, it's all just been stewing in her mind. Like it's not as knee jerk as it seems in the cuts there, because she's had time to process it and get upset or not. I mean, here's the thing: no one ever knows how they're going to react in moments of great trauma until it happens. I did not feel that any of the reactions were necessarily out of character. I think they all were the extremes of the actions. But that's just good storytelling, in my opinion. Like, you're raising the stakes, you're taking it to its biggest possible conclusion. I definitely see Randor taking out the most on Duncan. I mean, that just makes the most sense. If you found out that, you go by any history, Duncan and Randor have known each other basically since childhood, maybe young adulthood at the latest. He's his top man at arms. He's a friend. And then to find out, like, you kept this from me about my own, like, my son and you had this connection and this secret and these lies, and now he's gone, and that it's the ultimate betrayal, and that's why he went harder on him than he did on anybody else, because, like, out of anybody, you should have told me. Because if Shawn found out something about my daughter and didn't tell me, like, I'd be pissed. Out of anybody, you should have told me. Yeah, Orko and Cringer aren't going to, but how could you not? And I don't want to get too far ahead in the future, but I can't wait to see what happened to him and Marlena after this scene. Like, where are we going with that? Because, again, it's like, okay, well, if my best friend didn't tell me, you'd think my wife would have clued me in when she figured it out years ago, apparently. Like, I mean, there could be some good stuff coming.
Oh, yeah. And that was something with how the story goes. I was like, the first 5 episodes to me were almost like a class reunion for the bad guys.
Yes.
You got to see where they were 5 years in the future, and here's your reunion with everybody. But when you look at like the good guys, you only got Man at Arms, Orko, Cringer, Tila, and Roboto, really, and Andra. But Andra wasn't there for the initial stuff, so
No,
it's like, you know.
Well, just because Andrew, I thought was very well done in the fact that she was actually our intro character in this series. I
Mm-hmm.
felt because she's
Yes.
playing catch up. She's got to have it explained to her. Like to her, Grayskull even is just a myth. You know, the
Mm-hmm.
Horde is a myth. Like all this stuff is just kind of like, oh, it's that stuff you hear about, but wherever she grew up, it never got directly affected by any of it.
Yeah.
So, you know, she's the one where she can be the audience going, wait, what about this? And then that gives these
Yeah.
characters a reason to be monologuing about their backstories to let us know who they are in this timeline. Which
Mm-hmm.
but I thought she was a very well done character and a necessary addition to the series.
Yeah, and I think for me though, it was like, okay, we left Randor and Marlena on that
Yep.
note,
Yes.
and you don't see them, and it's like, in the back of my head, I
Nope.
was like, in the first 5 episodes, in particularly, there is no B plot. It's the A plot of
Right.
This is what we're doing. We're on a journey to get the 2 power swords, reunite them, and hopefully everything goes back to normal again.
Yep.
And for me, at least, I was like, man, I would have liked to see something where they went to what is Randor doing now? What is Marlena doing now? Because that was such a wrenching moment in their family and all that. And then on top of that, there was like an element of, it would have been kind of nice to have like at least something letting you know Adam is out there somewhere. And I know that was a storytelling thing they did because they didn't want you to know that. But there was a part of me going, well, for those people who were feeling the way they felt about the show with lack of He-Man and Adam, would have been kind of nice to have like at least episode 3. He like blinks his eyes open and Vicor's standing over him or something, and he's like, "You're so little," or whatever, and they pick him up and. And at least or have it be like he feels like he's in danger because there's these warriors around him and he doesn't know what the deal is or whatever, But that's just me being like, if I could have done more, I would have done just like when Tila finds out about Adam at Grayskull. I mean, even like you said, we leave that moment, it cuts right to the palace. And for me, I was like, what if there was like this moment of her walking out of there and Duncan being there going, what happened? And her being like, we lost him. And he's like, He-Man. And she goes, Adam. And have him go, no, and it's like, it's the whole thing of, then she's like, I know what happened. And then she's like, it's the whole, I don't want to talk to you anymore or whatever, and walking out. And then it leads to that scene and it solidifies her stance then, in my opinion. But again, they have a time limit, 25 minutes, and there is only so much you can do in there. And these are little moments that I feel they don't make it any different or better. It's just, it would have been nicer to have like, here's a little buffer of 30 seconds to tell this little moment or whatever. But on the whole, the episodes did a good job of, it went from here to here to here to here. And there wasn't a whole lot of moments where you're sitting there going, man, I don't care about this. I want to fast forward or something.
No, I agree. And I think it was very intentional that we don't return to the Royal Palace. That this is, because we are, after that first episode, we are following Tila's band on their journey.
Sure.
And so I think that was very intentional she cut ties. We are not going to see what happens here now. I think that's, and I have hope that that's all coming on the back half, the back 5. That now that Adam's back, now we're gonna have the rectifying and everything, and everything's gonna come to a head there, and I'm looking forward to that. But I liked how it started off with her and Andra, and they're doing their thing, and then they find Evil Lynn ends up thinking she's tricking Tila, but Tila knows who it is, and you know, and really, I mean, you want to say it's the Tila show. I understand now after seeing the series where that narrative kind of came from, but it's still
Mm-hmm.
completely false because Tila's only got one episode, and that's that second episode where it's her and Andra. They're figuring out what's going on, and they're getting sent on their quest by the sorceress and Evil Lyn working together. And after that, you have a Man at Arms episode, then you have an Orko episode, and then you have a Roboto episode. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
don't see how anybody can look at this and not see that. Like, yes, we're following, like I said, Andrew's our intro character. She's our eyes, and we're following Tila, but it's all about her realizing that there was a family here because that's what's shattered in the beginning for her. That this what she doesn't feel like this was really a family. This was anything real because of all the lies. But now she's coming to realize no, this was, and all of these guys are willing to put down their lives because to fix the world. The world is dying without the magic.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, and even and it was Cringer to convince her to go on the test to the quest. He's like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, he's like, I knew Adam, you knew Adam, and I know Adam's at peace because he knows that you're here to lead the royal guard. You're here to fight the good fight even after he's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and you know, and then the rest of it is Tila going, well, he left me here, but I really haven't stepped up. I've been doing my own thing. And I think that weighed heavily on Tila, where she's like, I did not do what I should have done. I did not carry out my duty. I abandoned it. I walked away. And that's on her. And she's realizing that. And it all comes to a head once we get to, you know, the afterlife. And she joins back up with Adam in that scene where He's like, well, why do you even need the power sword? He's like, we won. It's over.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, we won, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's that and you can see it when we do finally join back up with Adam. He's at peace. He's like, he mourns Orko because Orko had just allegedly died, but he's at peace. He's like, yeah, this is hunt day. We do this and we do that, and here's Vicor and Mundar, and
Mm-hmm.
he's just like the rest of them. He's like, I fought the good fight. I saved the universe. You guys are taking care of it in my absence. I'm at rest now. I died, and he's good with it. But as soon as that glimmer of you know maybe it's not over. Adam's whole demeanor in
Mm-hmm.
Preternia changes, and now he's starting to get unrestful. Now he's looking worried. Now he's more like he's pestering Tila because at first he doesn't even want to know anything about why they're here. He's just like, oh yeah, you're here. You're not supposed to be. Like, let's get you out of here. And but then as it goes on, he's like, oh no, like I want to know what happened, what's going on. And
Mm-hmm.
Tila, on her own part, she's trying to keep him in the dark. It's such a great dynamic, and we're going to get into it a lot more in our episode 5 breakdown. But God, just sitting there with the two of them, it's like this is gold. Just this chemistry
Mm-hmm.
between the two, and the duty versus like what he's already given up his life. What more do you want? He says it to her when they're arguing.
Yeah.
She's like, I couldn't even be mad at you. He's like, I died. I
Yeah.
literally died. How can But it's so complicated and complex, and I just thought they did a really good job exploring what those kind of lies can do to people. Obviously, it was all Adam trying to keep the secret for a good reason, trying to keep them protected as much as possible. But at the end of the day, it's a part of himself that he never let her in on, and I just thought it was wonderfully well written throughout.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wish there was more between them other than the first and the last episode for that
Oh,
reason,
for sure.
honestly. And I got to admit, like a lot of people, I'm sure, were like, "Who's Chris Wood?" And when he stepped up to the plate to do this role, I actually was really impressed by what he brought to it, because he wasn't just playing it as, oh, I'm being a hero. There's these little moments where he talks in certain ways, in the way he delivers lines and stuff, where I'm like, there's soul to this Adam. There's soul to this He-Man, and it was really working for me. I think he's, as much as everybody likes John Irwin, which, you know, I'm never going to say that anybody's wrong for that. I feel like him playing Adam trumped Irwin for me, for the fact of what he brought to it emotionally, because yes, John Irwin, he didn't have to go to those areas very often on the episodes. So it's like, this is a way more emotional journey than anything they really dealt with on the original show. But I really was impressed by this guy. And, you know, like his chemistry with Teela, like you said, I felt that worked really nicely. And it was fun just to see, like, in the afterlife, one of the things that I liked, and it seems to be a popular opinion, is the whole, he chose his human form. He didn't choose He-Man.
Yeah, he didn't.
He chose, he powered down. He wasn't the hero form, and he's just Adam. And there he is. He's like the little brother to all these huge guys in the Preternia and all that. And it amused the heck out of me, because it's like he's taking all the crap from them, and they're dogging on him a bit and all that stuff. And he's just there like, you know, they almost like tussling his hair because they just find him amusing, you know?
Yes, absolutely. And it was a great dynamic between them. But, and the thing is, especially like during the hunt part, and they're all like giving Adam grief, tussling his hair. And, oh, look how small it's because he's so small. He's Flea Man. You know? But then, and that's like all like the boys club, right? Like they're all like, we're on the hunt, and you know, Adam's the only one who chose his unpowered form. But when Grayskull's talking to Teela, and they're just by themselves, you can tell the respect that Grayskull has for Adam. Even he can see, he's like, yeah, you know, and I'm paraphrasing everything here, guys. I'm not quoting, but basically his whole thing is like, yeah, we chose to be our big, you know, powered up selves, but he's Adam. And like you could just hear that respect, like he's like, you know, he knows who he is. And since long before the inception of Legends of Grayskull, but definitely since episode 1, one of my biggest pet peeves is any time someone tries to be like, well, you know, Adam is not really He-Man. I think this definitively puts it there as He-Man is at his core Adam. You know, Superman is Clark Kent. You know, all that. It's you know, it's kind of the misconception is the superpowered hero. Everyone would be like, well, that's their true identity. It's like, no, you know what? In my heart, I'm always Adam. So, and that's exactly what they did here. And I was so blown away by it, because it's on-screen validation of what I've been saying for years, that at the end of the day, he is Adam. It doesn't matter what weapon he wields, how big he gets, he is Adam at heart. Earlier in the series, Teela has that great line about, he's got He-Man had the humor of a teenager that doesn't get out much. And it's like, because that was Adam shining through there. And I loved all those. They do those flashbacks here and there to kind of keep He-Man in the mix. Teela remembering the better times. Those were fun. Every time they went back, there were just like traditional, like, you know, quips and fighting and everything else. And just like, you know, it really helped. Even though they've said it from the beginning, it really helped you feel like, okay, this is, you know, this is a history. We've done all of this, and now we're here. You know, number one complaint about Eternity War, they didn't do a good job establishing from the beginning that there was this whole long history beforehand, and now we're at the end of the universe. This one nailed it, in my opinion. they with the flashbacks and everything else, and you really got just the writing and the characters. They really got to where you're like, okay, and that's why I'm good with I mean, luckily Adam came back, but I was good with He-Man dying in this. I was good with the Hall of Wisdom being exposed. I was good with all that because to me it is like it's like okay, this is that point in the era, but all that stuff happened. They had those battles. They had the wins and everything. But yeah, this is a dark time,
Mm-hmm.
and but it's where we're at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Honestly, I mean, I guess I'll put it this way too. With you talking about the darkness and all that, I will say if there ever is another story where they try to kill off He-Man, I'm gonna be like, I'm good, and walk away. They already did it in the Thundercats crossover, which that give or take it, your mileage may vary in there.
I didn't think that was well done. I definitely prefer it here.
But here they did it again, and it's like you can only kill Superman once for me to take notice. If you start doing it every month, it's going to turn into again. Right. Okay, whatever. So I'm really hoping this is the only time we get this kind of story. And will it be the definitive one? Who knows? Because we had Eternity War, and that kind of was like the end of all things in that too, in a sense. And now we have this one, which is like a different take on the end of all things. But and on top of that, I know there was people that were not liking that the first episode of the Netflix after show was Kevin Smith doing hey, we killed him off not once but twice, man, and he was all like gloating about it. And I know it was a joke. It wasn't meant to be like rubbing anything in people's faces, but it is that whole thing of you can't do this story ever again. So let's move on from here and tell something else next time. Hopefully, if there is season, I'm not calling it season 2 when the next 5 hit. I look at it as that's its own thing. So if they do season 2, which is like 10 more episodes or whatever, let's move on from there and go into something else and have He-Man not be somebody like this in this series.
So we killed him off not once but twice. What do you think the odds are that Adam is actually going to die from the wound inflicted to him at the end of episode 5, percentage-wise?
Less than 30% at this point. I mean, the thing is, like, and we don't know how the power works out, because he does call upon the power of Grayskull again. Things get set into motion where it looks like, okay, everything's going to get back into place like a Filmation episode again, where it resets.
Well, it did.
It did, but then when
the orb comes back down, it seals back up, all the greenery is revived, sorceress powers back up. So I mean, I just want to throw it out there. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it does take great pains to show that what he did worked. The magic is brought back and contained. Yeah,
but then once Skeletor gets the sword. And then which I want to give props to Mark Hamill for this, because it was, first off, he got to be the Skeletor to actually do the incantation finally on any version other than the comic books, which, it's like when you have a vocal performance doing it and it's Skeletor, it's like, it's chilling to hear it. For me, it was like, I knew it was coming the minute he grabbed the sword, but it's still like hearing it. It's like, it's almost the equivalent of Captain America Winter Soldier, where there's John Walker holding Cap's shield, and then he's using it to bludgeon somebody with it later in the series, versus the, Cap would never have done. He would have used it like a Frisbee against somebody probably, or whatever, So, there is that feeling of this is an unholy incantation of it versus it being the noble one, which I feel Chris Wood actually, he went very noble and very earnest. And by the power of Grayskull, the way he did that, it was like, that's not quite it. But when Mark Hamill did by the power of grace, I was like, oh crap, And it makes me wonder, because we didn't see much after that point, other than here's the energy coming down, and then boom, there's Skelegod over top of Grayskull with that ending.
No, it's
like does it corrupt it? Is my question. Does that corrupt everything that he just set into motion? Adam doing it and him setting things right, is that going to take everything back? Because now, obviously, he has the power as in Skeletor, and how does that work? That's definitely the episode 6. They got to answer some of these things to start that episode.
I don't think so, for a couple of reasons. Number one, I do believe all the foliage is still green as he transforms. And number two, kind of the big thing was the red skies. They do those ominous skies in Masters. But at the end of episode 1, when the power is gone, the magic is gone from Eternia, they make a big deal about those weird Eternian skies that were used to disappear, and it's just like a generic night sky with bright stars. And the clouds come back when Adam starts his transformation, and and they're still there when Skelegod's doing his genie moment. You have 3 wishes.
Yeah. That was a little more over the top than I needed it to be.
I liked
it though.
But it felt very Masters, but I think there is a 0% chance that they actually kill Adam off again. Because then you'd have to bring him back again. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't even. Even my wife was a bit worried. She watched it with me. She was a bit worried. She's like, I don't know. That looked like a pretty bad injury. I'm like, hey, if this was a military drama, I'd be worried. But we're on a magical world, so it's gonna be. And the sorceress is back up to full power. Her and Duncan are upstairs, and I'm like, I feel that there's an easy enough ways to heal that. I mean, even when Skeletor got stabbed in episode 1, Evil Lynn immediately went to start working on it, and Skeletor shoot her away. And it is kind of that. It's that parallel. Episode 1 ended with Skeletor getting run through, and episode 5 ended with Adam getting run through. Have you checked out the Master of the Universe Revelation official soundtrack by Mr. Bear McCreary yet?
I actually have not had the chance to do that, and I've been wanting to.
It's very nice. Actually, it comes out on CD on July 30th. Pre-orders are open on Amazon right now, but it is available right now for download I know it's from iTunes, at least. I don't know if Google Music or anybody else has it, but I know you can get it on iTunes. And I was just listening to the preview parts of it, and very nice, obviously his full instrumentals with no dialogue, effects, anything over it. And I don't know about you, but that music has been stuck in my head all weekend. Ever since I saw that first episode. I think it's the best music since Filmation. Hands down, honestly. It's very well done. It feels right for Masters. And there is just a hint of that Filmation, like, they love those melodies, and that's all this is these different melodies. But specifically, when you get a chance, check out the Adam transformation music versus the Skeletor transformation music. And it's like, for all of those high heroic beats, and I'm not a music person, guys. I know there's probably a way better way to explain this. I don't have the vocabulary to do it. Maybe check out Jeremy DeWitt on Podcast of the Universe. He could probably do a really good job. But for all of Adam's, like, ba-da-bum, bum, ba-da-bum, you know what I mean? Like, all those high heroic notes, like, all of Skeletor's are like these low, like, sneaky notes. Like, it feels, listening to them back to back, I listen to Adam's and then Skeletor's, they feel like the musical opposites to each other.
Nice.
It's a really neat thing that I didn't pick up on during the episode in either of the times I watched it, but listening to just the music on its own, it's like that is like the inverse of Adam's transformation. Like Adam's is full of hope, and they got either his theme or a similar theme. Basically, whenever anything's going good, it's got kind of that same like high note,
Mm-hmm.
it makes you feel good. And then this one is like all the opposites. Like, oh no, some sinister stuff is going down right now.
Sure. Honestly, ever since we got to hear the transformation with Kevin talking over everything, that has been in my head for months.
Right.
And when you see that whole transformation play out and you get to hear it the way it was intended to be heard, that is what's still in my head every day since watching that. I'll get it, dun, 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 and it's like,
see Shawn
again,
than I am.
It's got that Conan Basil Palladorus theme. There's definitely, it's a kinship there, which I like, because I always thought his theme was pretty darn cool too. But then when you get into like some of those moments with like the awe-inspiring, like when you're seeing all of the armor coming on to him and Cringer, and it's like, it's like it's like you hear it going, oh, you even have the chorus singing along with it. It's like, man, that's great. It works.
I love the new transformation sequence. I thought it was really well done. It's kind of it's the busy. It's not as busy as Mike Young Productions, but it's more busy than Filmation. But I thought they just hit a sweet spot on it. I don't know, the music and the effects and everything else. The harness coming on and then the emblem like this is. It really feels like he's just being buffeted with all the power of the universe, and he's just like, I got this. Let's do this.
Yeah.
Like, even as it breaks for him to transform Cringer, he does like that. Like, I don't know, it's the whole thing. And it's funny you mentioned the Kevin Smith thing, because it was actually up until my second watch through, Kevin makes his noises all throughout there. And there's that point where you hear that, like, oh, like.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was Kevin.
Because he was mashing the figures together by that point, yeah.
Right. It's not. It's Cringer. It's when Cringer gets hit. That's Cringer's like, oh no. Like, I just realized that now. I'm like, wait, that's that noise that I attributed to Kevin when we were listening to that reveal, but it wasn't at all.
Same
here.
I
first listened at Cringer, so that was a neat.
Yeah. I thought the same thing when the episode aired. I'm like, no kidding. I was like, wait a minute, did Kevin just put a little of himself into this? No, It actually is Cringer. That's pretty cool. And honestly, no offense to Cam Clark, but Chris Wood knocked I Have the Power out of the park for me. Like, his By the Power of Grayskull, still I question that. Like, I still like John Irwin and even Cam Clark maybe a little bit more, because he had that, like, it wasn't nearly as earnest. It had this like, by the power of Grayskull, when Cam would do it, at least. And when Chris does it, it's almost like this solemn oath, and I'm like, I still need a little getting used to that one for me, to be honest. But his I Have the Power, it's like, hell yeah. Like, that was and we had that talk, not argument, but that talk when it was going on about I don't think he's He-Man yet. He sounds like he's still Adam. But when that moment hits, I love that he does this with the sword.
He does
it's almost it's like a little homage to the I Have the Power bit. And when he goes, I have the power, and it's like, that's when his whole body's going into like power up mode. And I'm like, yeah, it works. It really just does. And like, when everything would, like, the armor, it almost made me think of like back in the day, there was like Centurions, the cartoon, and even Voltron and stuff, where you just see and you just have that like things forming on them and parts coming together. And I was like, it actually made me feel like a kid watching a cartoon again, going like, that's how that would have felt in the 80s if they would have done it that way. No,
I agree. And my only regret about it is that we only got to see it once in 5 episodes.
Yes.
But I really hope Netflix, anybody that's listening, I really hope that the last 5 will make up for that. And and I really think they will. I feel that while, like you said, this was all the villains arc. This is how stuff gets bad. This is the Empire Strikes Back part of the show. And I really think that back 5 are going to be the Adam coming to his reckoning and getting things right again. So, and I have faith that we will see He-Man just as much as we'll see Adam. I don't think this is going to be, and I hope it's not going to be, He-Man finally shows back up in episode 10 to win the day. Like, I think they're going to do us better than that.
Batman Beyond. That's all I'll say. He did spill a little bit about it. So yeah, Batman Beyond.
Batman Beyond or Fat Man Beyond?
Fat Man Beyond. It's still, I think it's called that still, right? Or whatever.
I
just
thought you said Batman Beyond. I'm like, yes, that was a great show. Terry McGinnis is awesome. Like, what does that have to do with anything?
FATMAN.
There it is.
Beyond.
FAT.
Oh yeah, he gets into it there. So
I will say I have a couple complaints. I'll do my small one first. And that's honestly Merman's voice. It wasn't a bad voice. And I don't even think they should change his voice. I just need a little bit of brr, brr.
Yeah.
Just give me a little underwater sound effects, a little drink of water while he's saying the lines once in a while. It was just it was too clear. I could not get over that. Even on the second watch through, I'm like, nope, it's still not working for me.
Yeah, when we found out what the cast list was, and then they're like Kevin Conroy's could be Merman, I was like, why? Like I could have pictured him being I could have even pictured him as Skeletor, for instance.
Yeah.
If he would have done like a certain variation of Batman voice, maybe, or something. And then when they're like Merman, I'm like, is he going to do something that's going to be out of left field? And then when I heard him, I'm like, no, it's Batman, but it's Merman. And that really did make me just go like, and granted, I'm never going to say Kevin Conroy is not a good voice actor. I'm not trying to say that at all. But I was just like, out of all the roles you pick, that's who you picked for Merman.
Like I said, I kind of liked his delivery of it because he went more like the ruler Merman. Like he's the Namor, the Aquaman, I got he was going for like this like almost Shakespearean king type of thing. And that's fine. Just give me some brr in there. Like all that. But I
just like to give me some brr.
That's what it needs. That's all it needs. It just needs that I'm a fish that just came up from under the water. Like, I've still got a little bit of salt water in my gills. That has always been a Merman thing. He's always had that little bit of stereotypical merman type stuff. And it's like that was needed.
The more I think about it, though, it's like everything about this show really was turned up to 11 when it came to trying to make it feel adult versus it being more comedic or maybe even silly in some ways. And Merman's voice, for me, like it's a staple. You always have like you said. But it's like their version of Merman in this was very much, he'd be the one to take out He-Man and take the chest harness from him, like in the mini comics. And he's the one.
Technically, He-Man fell off his sky sled, and Merman just happened to cross his body while he was unconscious. But
But you know what I mean. He'd be that version.
Just saying.
He'd be
Just
that
saying.
version. He'd be that version over the, like, oh, would you like some water with your meal and all that.
Yeah.
Because 2000X for me was intolerable. I really didn't like that version of his voice.
Yeah.
And I know the voice actor did other things. It's like, fine, but his version made me just go like, oh, it's like fingernails on a chalkboard to listen to that. Alan Oppenheimer in the 80s definitely, like, that's Merman to me, because there weren't many other variations.
Yeah.
And it's like, but this one was very much play it straight. Don't have that blah blah thing going on. Just make it like, okay, he's more cunning and devious. And like even Skeletor does that. I formed an unholy alliance with Merman and all this stuff. So it's like it's got that vibe of, he is a force to be reckoned with in this. He's not just a henchman.
They made them equals. They made Skeletor's aligning with him instead of just him serving Skeletor. Like I said, I liked all that. It just I'm not saying you have to go full, Mike Young Productions nails on a chalkboard to you. I'm just saying I think just a little bit of editing, audio effect on there. Maybe even a little bit of echo. I don't know. It just needed a little something to be like, dude, this is a fish talking to me. That's about it. And then the only other big thing I have is them using Preternia for their heaven. When and to a slighter degree, them using Subternia for their hell. But the Subternia thing I kind of let slide because that came about in Mike Young Productions, which we know this is set before. I thought they did a good job of integrating things like King Grayskull and Subternia and stuff like that. I'm a little more forgiving on. But Preternia has always been referred to as the ancient Eternia, like either the time of King Grayskull or Hero, depending on who you're getting. And so I felt it was unnecessarily confusing to also use it for their afterlife, their Valhalla, especially because in the comic that came out, the prequel comic, and this is my biggest thing, if the prequel comic hadn't done this, I might have been able to let it slide. But the prequel comic has He-Man going and visiting Preternia to find out about when the Orlacs first came. So it's like we've used it both ways in one series, and I felt that just unnecessarily confusing. I think they should have come up with another name for the paradise that all the heroes wind up in.
I guess if we're doing like things that we weren't the most thrilled with, one of the things that I wasn't the most thrilled with was and I feel bad saying this, but the character designs of the villains in the fast forward bit, flash forward bit. I was not a fan. Like Merman was basically, let's just take his armor off and that's Merman. And I was like, he looked freaking awesome with his armor on in that flashback on the boat. And then you show me, here's Merman. He's got a couple scars. He's lost an eye, but there's no armor. And I'm like, I guess it works from like okay, he can swim faster standpoint. He's more aerodynamic underwater or something. But I'm just like, it literally reminded me of like when I had a figure and their armor would break when I was a kid, and I'd be stuck with, here's the figure with no armor to differentiate them. And that's how he and Beastman both felt to me. Which I loved Powerhouse's like vintage looking Beastman and vintage looking. Those were amazing. And then we get the character designs for the new ones, and I'm just like, that's it. Like I felt like there was something missing in those translations.
Well,
that was definitely something where I'm like, it didn't stick the landing for me.
See, I felt that was intentional because they are the ones who are on the outs with Snake Mountain. So it did feel like, they lost their armor and they don't have the means to replace it. Like they are on the run because that's one of the big things. Like Triclops has taken over Snake Mountain. Very nice. I like that. He's always been one of my favorites to take over Snake Mountain in Skeletor's absence. And so it kind of felt like, yeah, these guys are on the outskirts of the evil warriors, and they don't have the resources anymore. Like they are just living there because they're the same as Tila. That's why they joined up because they're both just kind of scavengers, just roaming the
Yeah.
land right now. Like Evil Lynn can't even get that goblet out before she's chased out of Snake Mountain. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and that I want to see what happened there. Like
Yeah.
obviously it came to a head, and you either sided with Triclops or you sided with Evil Lynn, and obviously less sided with Evil Lynn, and they end up getting booted out of Snake Mountain, and now they're scrambling to survive.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's how I took it as. Yeah, they literally are like clothes on our back. That's all we got. If something gets damaged, it's gone. You know,
Yeah.
even kind of channeling that the concept art for the '87 Masters movie, like the live action movie where they're like, yeah, He-Man's a warrior on the run. He picks up whatever he's got off the battlefield. He's a
Mm-hmm.
scavenger. That's how I took that as.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. The designs themselves for most of the, like, I know everybody was poking at Tila about that,
Mhm.
but to me, I actually didn't mind her look at all. I thought it
No.
worked nicely as here's this like you
Absolutely.
said, a scavenger, almost like a Tomb Raider character in
Right.
Eternia over, like, okay, when she looked the way that she looked in the beginning of the
Yep.
series, yeah, she's working with the royal family and all this stuff. And now it's like she's doing the best she can to get by and doing
Yep.
her thing and probably cobbling together an outfit based on whatever she can find at times two or whatever. But yeah, like the redesign of Duncan I thought was good and all that. It just for me, all the villains just didn't land with me in that case. Even Triclops, Trapjaw, Whiplash, I was like, all right. I think again.
Pope Klops?
I'm not
absolutely. Oh, I want to figure Pope Klops.
But there is something when you see their original designs and they're actually Powerhouse and some of the people that worked on the show are now putting on Instagram or on Facebook. Here's the behind the scenes like character detail design and all that. And when I see like Triclops, the original version instead of the newer one, I look at that and I go, man, I would have loved to see at least an episode of him looking just like that again instead of Pope Triclops like you're talking about and stuff. I get it. It's progressing the story, but there is like when you see that original design of Triclops done by Powerhouse, it's just gorgeous. And then when you see the new one, it's like, oh, I wish we had the old one still for that episode. But that's, again, progression. And that's for me being who I am. Mm-hmm. And for me always saying I want to see something that pushes the story in a new direction. It's like that was my biggest thing where I was like, they're pushing in the direction and it's interesting to me. But then when I see these new designs of the characters, that's where I'm like, in my direction, in my own headcanon, I would have just kept them looking similar and not doing the overhauls like some of these are because I still like those old designs.
Right.
But yeah, you gotta, it's like, I'm not in charge of it. I'm not going to sit there and tell them what to do, but it just, like, and the one for me that was Triclops, obviously Beastman was one. And I kind of miss seeing Trapjaw because he's covered by all those robes now. And I'm like, part of what makes him look awesome is he's so Frankenstein looking, you know, like Frankenstein's monster. And they even went there with the saw coming back on his face. I'm like, there you got another thing that made it look even more insane. And then he's got the scar
and the dead eye after that.
Exactly. Oh. And it's like I wanted to see that with the traditional version where he's still got, you could see all the armor and the arm with the robotics and all that and the steampunkness of it. But
maybe after Skeletor comes back and he takes back over and the cult's disbanded. I mean, you never know. That's the thing. It's not
never know.
It's not like they can't go back to a more traditional. But I liked it when I first saw Orko. I'm like, because they showed that new Orko long before they showed the classic Orko, and I thought, I'm like, man, he looks dirty, he looks grimy, he just looks. And then it's like, oh wait, no, he's supposed to. Like that's the same
Mm-hmm.
thing. Man at Arms, when he's in the tent, and he's got all his cloaks and everything off. His shirt is all patched up, and it's
Mm-hmm.
got stitches on it and everything. And it's like, no, all these guys are all the outliers. They're the ones
Mm-hmm.
who, in this new world order, have not found their place. And now they're all joining together, and I think that's very much intentional. I think a lot of thought went into where you take these redesigns. So
Mm-hmm.
I was digging it. I can't wait to see more. I can't wait to see what they do with Adam in the next 5.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's going to have some serious upgrades. Just speculation.
Well, we have to touch upon this because we haven't even brought this up yet. But
Let's touch it.
let's do it. So, how
Both
cool
hands.
was it? Both hands. How cool was it to finally get Scareglow in animated form?
Oh, absolutely spectacular. I actually really dug what they did with him. I liked how they kind of made him this otherworldly presence. And it even added more weight to the comic scene where Grayskull goes to him for the ore to make the dark half of the power sword, so he can defeat the Orlax. Because even though it didn't go into it in the comic, it was just a single panel.
Mm-hmm.
Grayskull went through the same thing Tila did. He
Yep.
had to face his fear and survive in order to get that ore from Scareglow, because that's his thing. No, I really
Mm-hmm.
liked it. I really liked his whole kind of concept and everything. And my guess for him is, like I said, Orko was trying to banish him when they were escaping, so it still leaves the door open, depending on where Orko sent him, that he could now come back and actually serve under Skeletor. Like if Orko sent them even to the surface of Eternia, and now Scareglow's weakened by being out in the sun, so he joins up with Skeletor to try and get back to Subternia. Like he could still fulfill that vintage role, um,
Mm-hmm.
even after everything that's happened here. But I loved his little mind games and everything. The power of fear, it was great.
Well, also we had that talk when we did the Power of Fear comic book, where we were like, you could see they're acting out their fear in the one panel, and we were like, oh, that's a little different than maybe the way we would have thought of it and all that stuff. And in this one, it was cool that they're all under attack, but each one's seeing something different in the attack, which I thought was cool. Where the fire bats for Beast Man, the zombies for Andra, and I even liked when that whole bit happened. One of the MVPs as well for me of the series was Roboto. Oh, yeah. And I love that when he's going in to fight all of them. Sorry, excuse me, you're going to need to seek some medical attention for that. I was just like howling, thinking that's good writing. Awesome. Oh, again, like going to him for a second. I did not care about Roboto as a kid. I had the figure. I knew he was on the cartoon, but he was one of those. He was one of those characters where he didn't really grab me like the human characters. Right. And the reason is because MYP had to prove to me that that is a good character. And again, that episode of him doing the Roboto's Gambit episode, one of my absolute favorites of the series, to be honest, because it made me look at that character in a new way. And what I loved is that episode actually mirrors Orko on this series, because the whole time he's just, oh, you're just a game player, Roboto. Go play chess while we're trying to go and solve this problem. And I want to help, and Tila keeps brushing him off until he turns into a freaking tank. And he's taken on all of Triclops' little bone warrior army and all that stuff, the skeleton warriors he created. And that made me think of him in this. Right. So it's like there are some MYP threads you can connect to make it go. And the whole thing of him saying, I'm his son. I'm Duncan's son because I'm
Yeah,
made after Duncan. And then he looks at Teal and he calls her sister. And I was like, that's just fun. I really like that element, you know.
I like that they went with the Man-at-Arms created him
Mm-hmm.
origin instead of the crash landed from Robotica. I think that was the right way to go.
Oh yeah.
And him discovering he has a heart, he has fear, he has feelings. He had a great arc in this.
Mm-hmm.
I like how, you mentioned how Scareglow, he kind of tapped into all their fears, but he also kind of needed consent too, which I like because, like, Evelyn and Orko was more in than Andra, Beastman, and Roboto. They had more kind of like general scenarios he trapped them in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It wasn't really too invasive, and it was more of just kind of like it wasn't just Beastman seeing the fire bats and Andra seeing the skeletons. It was like, oh no, he's sending like scary shit at us, and trying to scare us. And he got into Orko's head a little bit with Trala and stuff, but like he needed Tila to agree to the bargain before he was actually able to like throw her in the hole and dive deep into her mind. And so I liked it because it's so easy to make Scareglow an overpowered character. Like we said, if he goes up to Adam or He-Man, in that comic, Adam's fighting against, I think it was his parents. Same thing. He was worried about his parents finding out and how they would react.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, and we were like, well, does he see that? Does he not? And so I liked how it was kind of like, okay, so if you try and make a bargain with him, and he's exchanging your fear for whatever you want, kind of Crossroads demon esque,
Mm-hmm.
then you're granting him access, and then he can dive all the way in, and he can see it, and he can see exactly what you're afraid of, your fears. He's seeing everything, he's controlling it, but otherwise he's just doing more general stuff to scare you, give himself a little bit of power. But what he's craving, he needs that bargain. He needs you to come to him looking for something that he can trade for your fear, and he might end up consuming your soul in the process if you don't make it out. And I like that. I like the rules. I like the limitations. I don't like just, I think I even said during that, it's like if you go too wide with this, that's too big of a power. And but I thought it was very well done here where he needs that consent. He needs that deal. He is literally the devil trying to make a deal that's going to swing his way, and with Tila, it absolutely did not.
Yeah. Yeah. I noticed with the animation, even in his sequence, I felt like they punched it up just a bit more because they got to be the first animators to really put him into something. Because there's these moments when they focus on his face in that where it's like, man, did they really get that look? And they really just gave, and it's like, he's not, the thing too is he's not Skeletor, which I like. They very much made him his own look, and you can go, no, that's Scareglow. That's all Scareglow.
He had that little line in there though that kind of plays on the old, is he the ghost of Skeletor, or is he
serving Skeletor? Yeah.
We'll get into that on the deep dive, but there's still some ambiguity there, and I think that was intentional for the longtime fans to kind of go like, you know what, either origin could still technically be valid even here.
Yeah.
So I like that, man. There were so many nods, and we'll get into them in greater detail on deep dive, but there were so many little nods that, again, regardless of the fandom of these people beforehand, they did some research. They sprinkled some stuff in, whether that was them finding stuff or Ted's influence or Rob's influence, or whoever, I don't know. But they did their homework, and there was enough for me to go, okay, like, oh, look, there's that, there's this, there's that. And I was enjoying it throughout. And that was a lot of my second watch through, was kind of trying to keep more of an eye on the background and try and pick out stuff I might have missed. So
yeah,
I mean, Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, like they delivered a whole bunch of things that, for me at least, it makes it fun to go. This series, whether you love it or hate it, it's still the first time we see Scareglow in action like that. It's the first time we see Hero, which, Hero, depending how you view him, I know there were a few people out there going, well, he got the two swords and he just clanked them together and he just seemed kind of like, well, what do you do with that? And for me, I'm like, I don't know. I don't really have much to say about him because he wasn't nearly as compelling for me in that episode compared to, you got freaking Wondar, Vicor, and the new King Grayskull, the Revelation King Grayskull. And all of those characters were so much fun to watch in tandem that I want to actually... Here's I actually thought of this last night, and if they go here, I'm going to be mad because I don't want to guess what's going to happen in the back five. But I'll throw this out there and see what you think. So we have Adam, kind of he's against the ropes right now with what happened, and I see it as, yes, I see there is going to be, maybe the sorceress can heal him or something like that, and this is additional to what I thought last night, so we'll work with this.
Okay.
He's maybe teetering on the brink,
right?
Between he wants to stay there, and then he's also going back to Preternia, and they're telling him I know.
Okay,
but maybe there is something where they can tell something went wrong. Like there's either through Adam they can sense he's going, and his soul is about to leave or something like that. And so you're playing up the whole, he could die and all that, even though whatever.
Right.
But
he's not gonna. But yeah.
I keep going to they're the kind of show already that have shown they do something in one episode and then it comes around again. And they did the whole thing with the Havoc staff turning into a spear and He-Man's fighting against it in the first episode, and then in the fifth episode it runs Adam through. That kind of stuff.
Right.
And that like spin with Teela, and then it ends up being a spin with Andra and a spin with Adam later on, and all that stuff. I just got this feeling that even though Grayskull said they can't come back, they're dead, and they'll never go back to paradise again, I just keep thinking to myself, they're coming into this. It's gonna, and I just have it in my head where it's going to be almost similar to the portal scene in Endgame, where you think that all hell, it's all dead and this and that, and then they show up because the power of Grayskull is in the wrong hands, and either Zodak or somebody just goes, okay, we need you. You got to get in here because our champion he's not able to do it yet. We need to bide time. And they show up because they're like, we have to do this, and it's like it's for Flea Man, It's like we want to do this because it's him and we like him and all that. And I had it in my head like I want to kind of see them come back, and I'd love to see them in action where it's not them in this hunt where it's like it's a farce, it's a game. Let's see them be champions again and go full force against Skelegod and see what happens. You're not won over by that. I can already tell you're like, yeah.
Because we've already had the first five with Adam having, given himself up for the universe, and then coming back when he realizes I didn't get the job done. I need Adam to get the job done. I'm not saying that he won't. You know how I feel about my line of He-Man. Okay, it is not my favorite concept. And so for them to come into the present day and, even just buying Adam the time to get better or whatever, or even just giving him support, I'm still like, I'd still prefer not to. Yes, that sounds like an awesome scene. I would probably enjoy the hell out of it, but if we're talking preference, no thanks. Those guys can stay in Preternia. I think what we need to do, where it needs to go, is we need to get the band back together. All right. There are still so many masters missing. You know, we haven't seen Rayman, Stratos, Mannyfaces, Buzzoff, Snoutspout, Mechaneck. Like, there's so many guys missing. Find them. All right. We need time. We need an army. Put the call out. The captain's back. And He-Man's back. Captain Tila's back. Man at Arms is back. We've have them go to the palace. Have them talk to King and Queen. Have them put aside their differences. You know, have the full force of the Masters of the Universe. Biding time if you need time. Or just being that army if you need an army. That I would prefer to the Warriors of the past.
I want the Warriors of the past. You've always complained that we agree too much. We finally found that thing.
We're not going to find the middle ground on this one.
We found the one thing where they gave that to me where it's I love the Vicor concept and I love Wondar enough that at this point I'm very much like, I hope that isn't all we saw of them, because it would be fun for them to show back up in one way where it's a special, they need to be there. And it's again, it's showing that, they're heroes in their own right because they gave up their place as well, because they know it's a bigger reason. And also, like I said, they loved Adam. You can just tell with how they were with him. So it's that idea of they respect him, and it's we should look out for him. And it's I know you're not into the generational thing, and I don't even look at them as He-Man or anything. Right. I look at them as they were just some of the greatest warriors of their generation or of their era or whatever. He-Man is He-Man. That's the way I still see it. I don't see it the way, like, that's why it's not muddling it for me. So I would love to just see something like that. And there is a part of me that I started going, okay, well, what if Orko's the reason that they come in? And it's like, and I'm like, oh Christ, then it's Doctor Strange. And then I don't need it to go full Endgame, but there is a feeling to me of there's going to be some kind of big reveal where all of a sudden they show up and you're like, Jesus, they got everybody to show up for this because this is what they're up against, this, Skella God of all things. But believe me, I want to see Ram Man. I want to see Mannyfaces. I want to see Fisto. I want to hear Fisto in this. I want to hear Clamp Champ in this,
Clamp Champ had no speaking lines yet. And,
exactly.
We haven't seen Eilina yet. Grant, I don't think she's going to be a huge force, but there are still characters out there, even ones that we know have voice actors that we haven't heard from yet. So it's coming, folks. But as far as that, I want to see him too. Hero, Vicor, all of them. Give me a Masters of the Universe anthology series. I've been crying for this for years. Make that the follow-up. After Revelation's over, do an anthology series where there's an episode about Hero and his adventures in Preternia. There's an episode about Vicor fighting the frost giants of the Mystic Mountains. Just these little... They don't have to be connected. Just like these little snapshots, a day in the life of Mechaneck. This is, whatever he did. Or give me a couple pairings. Give me a Ram Man and a Buzzoff. Just have them have a little half-hour adventure. Just Masters of the Universe. Just highlight all these... A different character every episode. They don't have to lead to anything, nothing. It's just here's what happens, when they're fighting a regular evil. Instead of the world-ending evil where you need all the Masters of the Universe. The history... Do a History of Grayskull series where you go through Wondar and Vicor and all them. And just kind of their time with the, guarding the sword or protecting the land or baking bread or whatever they did,
that was actually something last night. I recorded with Council the first. I did like this. They were saying there should have been a banquet when they were in Preternia, one dart just picks up the loaf of bread and he just walks away, and they're like, "Is that all he's gonna have? That's his favorite thing to eat."
Oh Lord. That would have been good though. Not gonna lie.
It would have. You would have gotten a good laugh out of that at least. It doesn't have, like, in the case of him, he's one of those characters where it's like, he wears that on his sleeve a lot. I mean, on the freaking Classics figure, he's got the Wonder Bread, like the hint at the logo. Right. So you might as well just lean into that one, no matter what you do.
Though, yet again, that was in no way, shape, or form anything remotely related to Wonder Bread.
I understand.
Yet again, I gotta clarify. Our listeners like it when I clarify.
I know they do.
Or I like it when I clarify. Either way, somebody's happy.
It's the urban legend that just went in a whole wrong direction, but it just stuck. It's almost like in that reality, it's almost like we don't call him Batman. He's Flying Squirrel. Why? Because we just thought he looked like a flying squirrel one day, and it just stuck. And now he's Flying Squirrel, and that's all there is to
it. All right. Well, we have prattled on for a bit here. I think we need to put some cold, hard numbers behind this. So, for this one, we're breaking it down a little bit more because we felt that this was such a big, epic tale that just a generic overall ranking isn't going to get us there this time. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, we're going to rank 5 categories. First up is animation. So, Shawn, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you rank the animation?
I would give it a 9. And that's not the reason I can't go 10 is there are definitely a few moments when I watched it just last night, like when the Shadow Beast in Trala comes out, and it almost feels like there's a frame or two missing in some of that where it has like a very kind of look. And I really hate saying that because, like Powerhouse to me is like they're becoming one of those like amazing places to watch animation from. But there are just a few little moments here and there where it wasn't quite, there was something up. I couldn't figure it out. The 3D didn't bother me though. The scanned vehicles and stuff, that didn't bother me as much as those little herky jerky little moments that I was catching from time to time.
See, I go a 9 as well, but mine is the 3D. I think that does not mesh as well as I'd like it to. It does look better here than it did in the previews and everything, but there's still just a bit about it that just kind of takes me out for a moment. But a solid 9. It's very good animation. Voice actors.
Like the Kevin Conroy one still kind of throws me. And honestly, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I got just basing it on, consistency and obviously their performance. I got to go a 7. There are definitely people who shined. I think, like you said, Chris Wood is one. I thought Sarah Michelle Gellar did do a good job pulling some heavy duty there. But then you got the Kevin Conroys, who, good, was not Merman to me. And honestly, even Mark Hamill as Skeletor was either hit or miss. There were times I felt he did really good, and then there were times where I'm like, you really just sound like the Joker there. And that was the most frustrating part. It's like he had a Skeletor voice, but there was still a few lines, whether it be the dialogue or whatever, that were just like, okay, that's Joker. And I'll get into specifics on the episode breakdown. But a 7. It was above average, but I did feel that there were little things they could have. I think Mark needed a little more consistency, and then little stuff like the sound effects for Kevin.
I mean, out of the cast, I think, and I feel weird saying this, Mark Hamill was a 50-50 for me, like you said. Kevin Conroy, I still feel he deserved a different character. And one that I felt was missing something was Stephen Root being Cringer. I was going into this, I was like, that's perfect. And then when I heard him do it, I'm like, that doesn't sound like him at all. Like that doesn't. I thought he would have done Cringer.
He tried to do too much of a character voice. I think it would have been better for him to do his voice.
Yeah, like him and a little more stuttering when he talked, because that makes that makes Cringer seem timid, and that's something that I feel reflects it. But Tony Todd, that's the thing. Tony Todd was perfect
that's what
casting.
I'm saying.
Griffin Newman.
Yep.
So I got to go 8 out of 10 because freaking Liam Cunningham, and we haven't even brought her up. Lena Headey.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
my God, she was like one of the best of the best in this series so far.
Oh yes, she owned that Evil Lynn, and it was a very, I feel, Meg Foster inspired Evil Lynn. That's who I kept getting vibes of. So if they do ever get a live action He-Man movie off the ground, I don't think they need to look too far.
I hope they do that. Exactly. The other thing really quick is I really didn't like it when Skeletor in episode 5 called her Lenny. That was too Joker.
One of the lines I was thinking of. Yep.
Oh, good Lenny. It's like Skeletor wouldn't talk like that.
No,
like that was one of those lines where
that was Joker all the way. That is one of the ones I was thinking of specifically. Yeah. It'll come back up. Don't you worry. All right, soundtrack.
I mean, it was really hard to go. How are they going to top how Filmation was? But I really love that transformation music a lot, and there's definitely heroic cues and all that kind of stuff. And the music when Orko and Scareglow go head to head is epic. So I'd probably go 9 out of 10 there. I want to hear a little more of it before I can go. But that one's probably the most solid thing out of what we've talked about for ratings to this point.
Oh, yeah, I'm going straight 10 out of 10. Mr. Bear McCreary, he did
Bear McCreary!
It was... And I went into it not expecting too much, not that he's not a great composer, whatever, but it just... Like you said, how can much top Filmation? But by God, he did. And I'm not saying he top Filmation. Let me retract that before everyone jumps on me. But it's so unique and it fit perfectly. So it equals Filmation. Like how that music, I hear that Filmation music, and it instantly takes me to the points in the episode that are my favorites. Same thing with Bear's soundtrack. It's like listening to it on iTunes, I'm like, oh yeah, like I'm picturing the whole scene in my head. It's just like, boom, 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 and you're like, oh yeah, something good's gonna happen. He really did his own thing, made it feel like Masters, and it was just so memorable.
And the thing for me is like when Filmation and the Shuki Levy or Levi, however you say it, when he did that, it was like a superhero theme.
Yeah.
And I loved it when I was a kid. To this day, if I hear that song, I just get a grin on my face and it's like, yeah. But going into Filmation, we were at an era where the toy commercials were starting to dictate, here is what the theme song will be like. When you heard G.I. Joe, you're going to hear the commercial from G.I. Joe because it was the same song. Right. When you hear, Transformers, same thing. And in the case of Masters, it was boom, 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 boom. And when you hear the way that he does the transformation, especially here, that's probably why I like it so much too. It made me think of those kettle drums back in the old days. And it's like, boom, 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 boom. It's like a faster version of it. And there's no He-Man over it, but it has this driving, like an adventure is about to happen. And you need the most powerful man in the universe to have your back in that. And it works. I mean, every time I hear it, I'm just like, yeah, it really is bringing out the kid in me again to hear that.
Absolutely. I agree. All right. Next up, we have characters. So,
Characters.
yep, how they were displayed, how accurately you felt about them, like how accurately you felt they were portrayed. Um, I gotta go. Yeah, I'll give it an 8 out of 10. I do think that this first five needed more Adam slash He Man. Um, but other than that, I felt like everyone else was pretty on point as far as their characters and what they would do. Like I said, it's extreme reactions to these circumstances, but it makes for great drama. So I'm all in. But I felt the characters were accurately portrayed for the most part. Even the ones like Orko, where they changed their backstory drastically, I still felt it was good for the show. So I'm still in. Probably my number one complaint is I wish, like we had speculated upon before, if they'd even just kind of done an Adam B plot where we're getting snippets of what was happening to him in 2 and 3, and then with him showing up at the end of 4, I might have been happier. Um, and after all 10's out, maybe I will feel like there's a good balance there overall. But the first 5 was definitely lacking, and that was on purpose. I mean, let's be honest. It was intentionally lacking He-Man.
Oh wow, this one's a hard one to just sum up, but I think I'll go with an 8 out of 10 because, like you said, there were times where I like that they had Skeletor figuring it all out because
Yeah.
that, like I said, huge nod to 2000X in that way, and I like that. And like the way he used magic, the sorcery while he was fighting He-Man, because what's that big fist cut, in the preview?
Yeah.
And then when you see, no, that's actually him trying to squash him, basically.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
like,
he did the
that's
portals with
cool.
the magnifying and everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, for the
And
most part, I felt everybody was on point for their character.
there was Skeletor for me is still going to be one of those where I don't like he has that moment where he's like, what color should we paint the boat? Granite. And I was like,
Yeah.
I don't like that version. I would love for him. He had such a force to be reckoned with feeling in the beginning of the first episode, especially with how he just goes right into Grayskull. And then it's like, then you go back to those moments and I'm like, oh. But He-Man I felt was on point. Adam was great. Sarah Michelle Gellar I thought was good, but I still feel like maybe they could have gotten like Tara Strong to be her, and they could have given her a little more range because she has the same voice when she's younger as she does when she's older, and it could have been kind of cool to have like maybe her voice is a little different later on or something.
Right.
Man at Arms is badass as usual.
Oh, yeah.
Orko won me over. Orko and Roboto were like the MVPs of this for me in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. So the fact that they went there says something. So,
all right, and the last one up is the storyline.
You want to go first?
Oh, sure. You know what? I'm going high. I'm going 9 out of 10. I've always speculated on how the secret comes out, what's the fallout from that, and I didn't think we'd see it all at the same time. But what's an Eternia without He-Man or Skeletor? Those are just kind of some big questions that have always been out there. So to see them actually answer this stuff, and we got some great character moments along the way. I like where the story's going. I like that they did already succeed. Like the first 5, it's about getting the magic back in Eternia before the planet dies, taking the universe with it, and they succeed in that quest. Unfortunately, that leads to a whole nother can of worms when Skeletor gets the power. So I like that they did have, I guess if you look at overall, this was kind of the B plot of the overarching Skeletor trying to get all the power story. I mean, and like I said, I think a lot more is going to come into focus with the second half, but just the first half on its own, I thought that these 5 episodes had a good beginning, middle, end, but it's more like Empire. It's like, okay, but we're not in a good place at the end of this. So what happens next? And honestly, it's got me excited. It's got me speculating, like, what is next? What can we do? Please don't bring Hero into the present, that kind of thing. So it's good stuff coming. And but I was entertained throughout. I watched it through twice. I'll watch it through many more times. It goes fast too. Like every time I sit down, I'm like, I'm just gonna watch an episode now. Well, the first time I said I'm gonna watch it all, but then when I was rewatching it, like I was gonna watch an episode now, and I'm watching 3.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you just keep going. It all just keeps rolling together. So I thought it was well done, well paced, and I think the back half's really gonna complete
it. So I guess let's see. For me being who I am, where I want to see the story progress and we don't just keep having what we always had, right. I have to give it a 9. Yeah. Because it really does leave you going, I feel like this is familiar to me, but I don't know where this is headed.
Yes.
And that's the thing that it's like every time I've watched it to this point, I'm still picking up new things because, again, it's something new. And that's what I love about it. And, like the fact we're incorporating things that never got to be seen before, that's a huge win for me because Lord knows, like I'm a big fan of if you can make this stuff incorporate and it works and it really is showing something awesome about these characters. Like I said, Roboto, Orko, Scareglow, all of the, I was like, I love that we got this wealth of character in these stories. And I love that Scareglow is actually kind of like a very, he's like a pitiful villain in that way where he's almost begging Teela, please let me know your fear. It's been so long since I've been able to taste fear. And all. And it's like, that's like some Wizard of Oz kind of stuff. And that was something else too. Like it really is like Teela's Dorothy. Andra is I figured them all out the other night. I was like, well, we got the Roboto, he's Tin Man, and we have the Cowardly Lion, Beast Man, and it's like it doesn't completely match up, but I'm just saying, like Orko would be Toto, and all that stuff. And it really does have that like Wizard of Oz. She's on this quest to try to get home again, in a sense, too, with how Teela's story works out here. So in that way, it's compelling. And I mean, I don't think I've heard many people when they saw that ending going, I don't want to see what happens next. Most people are like, how could they end it like this? I gotta wait how long now? It's like, you and the rest of us, pal,
Yeah, they're talking January or February of 2022. So
at least it's not too long versus,
not
when we
years.
heard about this originally and then we had, oh my God, like at least it's right around the corner. I mean, my daughter, when we watched it, she turned around, she's like, I need the back at 5 right now. I'm like, me too. I'm like, I really wish that it was right there. I would have had a whole day of He-Man. That would have been awesome.
Oh yeah. I don't disagree. I'm ready. Let's finish this. They did post that as of last Friday, they were finishing scoring the 10th episode. So if it makes you feel better, it's all sitting there in a can somewhere in Netflix headquarters, just waiting for January. So, no, that doesn't make me feel better. That makes me feel like we need to come up with an infiltration plan.
Yeah, like fanboys, we need to do that movie and break into Netflix and get to watch it before anybody else does.
Where your mind's at, Scavarna.
Exactly, yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
I've seen that movie more than a few times.
Overall, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I will watch it again and again. I will watch the second half the minute it drops. Hopefully, probably not the minute because it'll be 3 a.m. again. But yeah, I've got my nitpicks. I've got my complaints. I've got stuff. I mean, but I've got 30 years of my own stories in my head and places I want to see the franchise go. But you know what? I'm not in the business. No one's knocking down my door, so that's just my stuff. I can't hold it against them that they're not on the same page as me. But I did enjoy it. I honestly did enjoy it. I enjoy it more every time I watch it. I think it's a worthy successor to be held up there with Mike Young Productions and Filmation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe it's just who I am, and I know you and I are very similar in some of this, but it's when they said this is what we're getting, I never for once ever listened to how they worded things and said this is identical to what you said, and
Right.
I'm never going to be the guy to be going up against Kevin Smith saying he lied to me or it's a bait and switch, because to me it was just bring this new thing on.
Right.
I don't give a crap what your through line is. I don't give a crap.
Right.
And honestly, if I didn't know anything about this series and I just sat down and cold watched it without any other even previews, I would have still sat there going, holy crap, they're going to these lengths in order to tell a story where I'm literally engrossed in it and I need to see what happens next.
Yeah.
That for me is more than enough to go, holy crap. And for anybody who's doing the whole, well, He-Man's not in it, who the hell cares? It's called Masters of the Universe. It's not called He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. He's not the marquee name. This is supposed to highlight other characters, and thank God it did, because we have a great Orko. We got a great Roboto. Andrew actually adds some fun to the story, which is nice. Man at Arms is still there, and he's definitely a force to be reckoned with.
Yep.
Adam and He-Man are there, and Teela, there. She's always been one of the main characters. It's just that simple.
If anybody's really not there, it's Skeletor. I mean, he's in it less than He-Man and Adam is. So
yes,
but you don't hear that because critics weren't told to say that. But on lighter notes, it was very enjoyable, guys. If you enjoyed it as well, let Netflix know. I know the hashtag We Want More Motu is trending right now. But the biggest thing you can do, we said on our live show, I'll say it here again, the biggest thing you can do is just watch it. If you enjoyed it, watch it. Rewatch it. You know, that's what it's all going to come down to. Regardless of everything else, the critic scores, the audience scores, the hashtags, it's going to come down to views. If you were like our buddies and you all got together and watched it as a group, make sure when you go home you watch it on your own account and you watch it a couple times. You know, if you liked it. If you didn't like it, you know, I get it. It's not for you. I like some new adventures. Shawn doesn't. I mean, there are people out there who still don't like Princess of Power. That's perfectly valid. If you watched it, gave it a shot, wasn't for you, so be it. That is what it is. But I enjoyed it. I will continue to watch it, and I can't wait for the second half of season 1. And honestly, I hope we get a season 2. I mean, more Masters to me is always a good thing. It can only lead to more fun stuff.
Agreed. And I mean, we're actually in an age where we got new cartoons.
Right.
It's like that was still sinking in Friday morning when I was tuning in to watch it. It's like, my God, I don't know what this cartoon is going to be like. I know MYP. I have already sat through Filmation as a kid. Here I get new, and I'm literally going, I have no idea how all 5 of these are going to play out. And how cool is that? You know, I mean, jeez.
That's it. We got new media. I mean, that's, at the end of the day, that makes me happy. Before Shawn wraps it up, I do want to throw out there our good friend Yuka. He still has the pre-orders open for his unofficial guide to the Mike Young Productions He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. Check him out. I'll put the link down in the description below. It's going to be a good book full of behind-the-scenes trivia, deleted scenes, weapon twirling, all that stuff. So if you're still interested in a copy, there's still time. As of right now, pre-orders are open until July 31st, so you still have a few days. Check them out at the link below. All right, Shawn.
Definitely.
It's you, buddy.
All right. On today's episode, we learned that Revelation is a revelation. It's awesome as far as both of us are concerned. And how cool is it? Like I said, how cool is it after 20 some years, almost 20 years, I should say, we get new media like this and done the way it is. So I'll say thank you to Netflix. Thank you to Kevin Smith. Thank you to Mattel. Thank you, Rob David. Thank you, Ted Biaselli, and everyone who worked on it to make it something where I feel it's binge worthy multiple times in just one weekend. That doesn't happen often in my house. So if you want to get in touch with us, logpod85@gmail.com. Feel free to reach out to us that way. We have a Twitter account now, by the way, Legends of Grayskull, out on Twitter. It's if you want to do the @ symbol, it's @logpod85, ironically. There you go. So feel free to reach out to. Yes, I decided. Apparently I'm the Twitter guy out of the two of us, so I decided synergy works well. There we go. One less thing to say at the end of the episode like that. Join the Facebook group Legends of Grayskull Podcast. We geek out with everybody there. You can touch base with us there. Comments, questions, concerns, geek them as well, and also comment, like, share, subscribe on any of your platforms, YouTube, iTunes, Podbean, Podomatic, whatever. We did get a new review actually recently, and I did not print it out, so I will do it for the next episode where we can actually have the review, which was actually very nice and favorable. So thank you for the new review on on iTunes, now that I already cut myself off. And from me, until next time.
Until next time, guys, go watch Revelation.
Oh, come on. Oh, bear. Oh.